Today we're talking about hoarding.
My name is Elspeth Bell. I'm a licensed psychologist. I'm licensed in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia. I practice at the Behavior Therapy Center of Greater Washington, which is located in Silver Spring. And we specialize there really in the treatment of obsessive-compulsive disorder and OC spectrum diagnoses. And hoarding is on this spectrum. A lot of people think that hoarding is a type of OCD, and it's really not. There's a lot of research which is showing that there's a change where a lot of people with OCD, they're uncomfortable with those intrusive thoughts that they're dealing with. They don't want to have to do these rituals or these compulsions. They might be washing their hands for the 100th time and they're just crying because they don't want to do it, but they feel that they have to do it. Someone who hoards, oh, I really want to get 5 of these. Oh, let me get another one of those. Oh, I don't want to let go of anything because I feel good when I'm surrounded by my stuff. I like my things. The distress that's associated with hoarding is from the idea of either not acquiring something or from the idea of I have to let go of something. That's where the anxiety comes in. So what we're going to be talking about is really understanding what hoarding is, what it isn't, and then how you can intervene to help hoarders, and then also what other supports and resources can get pulled into place. There's some handouts which are going to be getting passed around. On here, just what is compulsive hoarding, a fact sheet. So just really quick, where is it on here? Sorry? They're getting passed around right now. What a lot of people tend to think about with hoarding, I mean, it's kind of like, actually one of the fire marshals up in Gaithersburg said, you know, it's like porn. You know it when you see it. And I said, well, that's great for us trying to understand it, but when you're trying to talk with someone who's living in a very cluttered space, how do you approach them by saying, you've got too much stuff here, the pathways need to be a bit wider? Well, too much stuff? Well, I let go of a bag of newspapers last week. Doesn't that count? Or a bit wider? Well, they were this wide when you came last time. Now my pathways are this wide. I can get through just fine. I often say a lot of people who struggle with hoarding probably should have gone to law school because they are the best at negotiating, debating, finding loopholes, and just working their way through things. So what I end up saying is, let's get as concrete and as specific as you can. Because remember, hoarding is nothing but a behavior. It is too much stuff coming into a space. It's not enough stuff moving out of the space. And because of that, it all accumulates, and it makes it too difficult to use the living space for the intended purposes. So that's hoarding in a nutshell. But what really makes it, the difference between clutter and too much stuff in the space and compulsive hoarding is the underlying issues that go along with it. We've got the behavior on the surface, but underneath you've got a certain pattern of thoughts and behaviors and feelings all kind of meshed in together that lead to what we see on the surface, a very cluttered and unsafe living space. So it really comes down to being an anxiety disorder. There's a lot of fear, a lot of worry. There's, the Boy Scout motto of always be prepared. Well, this is the idea of always be prepared for everything that could possibly happen because you never know what there might be. One client that a colleague of mine worked with, he had a parachute in his closet because you never know, you might be in a plane crash. Well, first of all, this gentleman, he bought this parachute at a yard sale, and he'd never even been in an airplane before. So what's the likelihood of his being in an airplane and that plane going down? Infinitesimal. But you never know. It could happen. So it's that thought process of I don't want to be caught unprepared. I'm afraid of what might happen. I want to hold on to all of the issues of the job section from the Washington Post because you never know. I might lose my job. I might not be able to find a new job, so I can go back and reference all these past issues and see what job listings there were because those jobs might still be open. Or if they're not open, those companies were hiring something similar to what I like to do, so they may create a new job for me, or they might be able to refer me to somewhere else. So when you think about it, you're like, well, that's kind of like an interesting way to go about networking. Yeah, keep some information, have some references, some resources, but to what extent is that going, oh, but now it's crossed a line? So just like, I asked somebody once, I said, well, who's ever done laundry before in their lives? Oh, come on, everyone here has done laundry before, right? All right, who is done doing their laundry? You, okay, wait, okay. Okay. Now, so you have someone else taking care of your laundry, but there is still laundry to be done. And the thing is that you could do all the laundry in your house and have everything washed and folded, clean, and put away. By the end of the day, there's going to be at least a pair of socks back in that hamper. And that's the same thing with clutter. That's the same thing with dealing with things in your life. There's always more stuff coming in. You always have to keep dealing with it. So when you think about a hoarder, I go into someone's house and I say, psh, I could come in. Why don't you go on vacation for 2 weeks, a month? Go to Tahiti. I'll bring some people in. We'll clean up your house. It'll look spectacular. And when you come back, you'll be like, oh, it's like Martha Stewart's home. Perfect. We could do that. But you know what? 2 weeks later, 2 months later, the clutter's growing again. 6 months later, it's going to be right back to where it was before. Why? Because the underlying patterns never changed. So what we need to look at are the types of thoughts that a person is having and dealing with the emotions that tend to come up. Because as the introductory story highlighted, first of all, it had nothing to do with her being from Vassar, because I went to Vassar. So just to say. But there is a lot going on with, probably some family history. Who knows what kind of tensions there were. If the daughter had been out of contact with the mother for, I think it was 8 years, give or take. Well, there's some kind of family issue that would be leading to a break between a mother and daughter for 8 years. And chances are it was related to the hoarding, but there were probably other things that came into play. So the family issues can be huge. There's also very often a history of trauma in some way for dealing with hoarding. So it may not be, a very readily identifiable traumatic issue, but more that somebody is dealing with a struggle or a challenge in their life, and their way of coping, their way of trying to manage their environment is to kind of hold on to things. One case example, which is described in the book Stuff, which is by Randy Frost and Gail Steckity. It's on the list of references and resources. They talk about a client who, she was raped in her home. Someone had broken into her house and raped her in her bedroom. And it was following that experience that the clutter began to grow. And by the time they came in to work with her, the house was filled. So they worked with her. They got the clutter down in every single room except one room, that bedroom. And that's when they were recognizing, wait a second, the clutter grew because it was related to a trauma. It was a way of creating walls, trying to protect yourself, trying to keep other people out. Now that's not always the case, but it's very often, it's representative of a pattern that's very common. Some kind of traumatic experience, some kind of struggle, feeling overwhelmed, feeling out of control. And this is a way to try to secure things. It's all, did anybody have, a favorite teddy bear when they were growing up, a security blanket? So you kind of get that loving, attached feeling to it, or you get that sentimental attachment to, wedding dress or a favorite sweatshirt. Think about all those emotions that get tied into your stuff. Now imagine that you get attached to, this is a very important piece of paper, because I put information on it, so you better value this. So you're going to hold on to this and put it in your filing cabinet. It's coming around in a minute. And then on top of that, you know what? Well, but I'm worried, because there's so much good information on here. What if I can't find it? So let me make some extra copies of it. So that way I can have it in multiple places, so that way I can come across it when I need it. Well, that's creative problem solving, but it leads to more clutter. And then you end up not being able to find it. Well, you know what? It's because I didn't have a good filing system. So I need to be able to find it. Let me put it on brightly colored paper. So that way it will stand out amongst all of the other papers. Then you end up having everything on hot pink paper. So there's these ideas, there's these solutions that there's a little bit that makes sense. But when it's put into this chaotic system, it just overwhelms. It ends up just creating more and more of the clutter. So we look for strategies, and this is actually where Marcy's going to be coming in as well, from the organizing side of things, for how do you learn to manage the situation. But you really can't manage the situation until you're also managing the thoughts, the feelings, and the history that the person has struggled with. So when we think about someone who's dealing with hoarding, I'm just going to go through pretty quickly the profile of a hoarder. So generally speaking, we think hoarders tend to be elderly. But what we're realizing is progressively that age is coming down. It used to be that people were identified as hoarders probably not until maybe their 70s. Now the average age for a hoarder coming to seek treatment is about 50. And now that, keep in mind, that's someone who's choosing to seek treatment. So when they actually are identified as hoarders, some people may not be identified until much later. Other people might be identified earlier on but resist any types of treatment or interventions. So when does the hoarding start? Any guesses? 13. That's the average age for it starting. But you also don't recognize it because, first of all, it takes a long time for that amount of stuff to accumulate. Second of all, sometimes you've got the parents cleaning up the stuff, doing the decluttering for them, or shoving it all in their room, closing the door, and saying, that's what teenagers are like.
And they're collecting.
They're collecting.
Collection.
It's not clutter, it's collecting. And some of it's age appropriate. So kids have collections of bottle caps and string. But when it gets to be a little bit more, then it becomes the clutter. But more often than not, those people are not identified because they're living in a household of other hoarders. There is a strong familial component. So there's multiple generations of hoarders very often. I've done consults with families where they actually went to NIH because they were doing some research there. They were told that their family, it wasn't severe enough hoarding, and they're like, did you see these photographs? We've got our great-grandmother, our grandmother, our mother, and our brother. All of them are hoarding. And this isn't serious? Yeah. But that's very common. So you have individuals who are probably in 40s, 50s, and 60s when they're first identified for treatment. They've been struggling with it their whole life. It's a pattern of behavior that they're familiar with because they've grown up around it. That's what their family tends to do. Very often they tend to live alone for two reasons. One, because their family are just like, we're done with this. We can't deal with your clutter and we're leaving. Or the other side is, I don't feel comfortable letting anybody else come in and get near my stuff. So I'm just going to continue to live by myself. This is going to be my space. I'm not going to get married. A lot of hoarders tend to either have never been married or are divorced. It's very typical. With this, there's a lot of impaired social functioning, difficulty at jobs, in part because of the clutter, but more often it's because of those underlying issues that tend to come into play. You've got anxiety, you've got depression, and a big one which is often overlooked, you have ADHD, a lot of executive functioning deficits. Because if you talk with someone, say, you know what, we need to clean up your place. Oh, okay, I've got a plan. Okay, you've got 3 months. We'll give you 90 days to clean up your space. Can you do that? Sure, 90 days, that's not a problem. I can do it, I've got a plan. You check in at 30 days. It looks the same. Oh, but I decluttered in this corner over here. Yeah, I'm working on it. I got the plan, I cleared something up, but you know what? It got filled again because I was working over here and I had to move stuff over there. Then you come back at 60 days. Oh, no, I've got a plan I'm working on, but something came up and I had to go do this other thing. I'm trying to get this done. We're getting there. You show up at day 85, 86, 87, really it's not going to have changed. Not because the individual doesn't want to declutter. Not because they don't appreciate the seriousness of it. Some cases, yes, some cases, no. But what often ends up happening is there's this gap between intention and action. That's the ADHD piece. That's the executive functioning. That's the planning. That's the feeling overwhelmed. That's the feeling anxious. It's the feeling depressed. I can't bring myself to start to move. I just feel sluggish. So you might walk into the house and just be like, man, these people, they're just lazy. They don't care about the clutter. They don't understand how serious it is. More often than not, that couldn't be anything further from the truth. Just not knowing how to do it. Instead, it's just, I feel like my hands are tied. So you go into this situation and you're frustrated. You're feeling overwhelmed. You're saying, look, we've got to get this done. You're going to lose your home. This isn't a safe space for you to be living. I'm concerned about your safety, your well-being, family tensions, you name it. It touches basically every part of this person's life. Well, how do we work on this? Parts of it, it's going to be a piece-by-piece approach. It can get done, but it needs to be, instead of eat the elephant, you take one bite at a time. And you take those bites, and it will build together. And focusing on immediate rewards, immediate benefits, because something that's happening further out in the future, it's not as salient because the anxiety is so overwhelming. It's, I want to feel better right now because I know I can feel okay by bringing something into the house or holding on to my stuff. That feels okay. But if you're telling me that in 3 months, when the place is decluttered, there's a chance I might feel happy and I might like what my place looks like and I might be able to have a relationship with my family again. No, that's too vague. That's not a guarantee. And they've actually done studies on that ability to delay gratification. If you get the chance, when you get home, Google or look up on YouTube for the marshmallow study. This is something that they did, I think it was in the 60s or 70s. They bring kids into a room and they put a marshmallow on the table. You can have that marshmallow right now. But if you can wait 10 minutes, you get 2 marshmallows. And you get some kids and they're just, I want that marshmallow. I will get 2 marshmallows. I will wait. Other kids, poking it, licking it and putting it back. They're a little ambivalent about it. Other kids, oh, can't wait 10 minutes. That marshmallow is gone. Those are the kids that, when they grow into adults, that difficulty delaying gratification, that feeling more focused on the moment, and that's what you tend to see more with hoarding clients. Yes. With hoarding clients. So what we want to take a look at is what kinds of behaviors are you going to try to address with these clients? How are you going to approach them? And like I mentioned, the anxiety, the depression, I cannot emphasize those enough, and the ADHD. But here's something that you probably don't expect. Perfectionism. It's kind of like, wait a minute, I've seen what those houses look like. Don't tell me that they can be perfectionistic about things, because that house is far from perfect. But it's this all or nothing thinking. If I can't have it completely done, all at once, exactly the way it should be done, I'm going to fail. So I'm not going to bother. I already feel bad about myself. I've got this negative voice going on in the back of my head almost all the time. If I can't feel good about doing something, if I can't feel great about it, if it can't be perfect, I'm not going to try doing it. So that's kind of like a defeatist attitude already. So that makes it even more difficult for you going into the situation to be saying, okay, how are we going to work with you here? It's piece by piece. It's setting the stage for small successes. Instead of let's clean the house, well, let's clean the bedroom. Instead of let's clean the bedroom, let's clean the bedside table. Instead of the whole bedside table, let's start with just the surface. Instead of the surface, let's just do one corner so that you have a place to put a cup of tea before you go to bed at night. And each of those things, those smaller steps, great, you cleared off that corner. Now let's do another section of it. It's like, if you ever did like Battleship, A1. All right, A2, space by space, instead of bombarding the whole area at once. So when you think about cognitive behavior therapy, what you're doing is you're sitting down going through the stuff with the individual. And at the same time, it's not just keep, throw, no. You're working through the decision-making process. What are you thinking when you look at this? What are your feelings? Where did this come from? Why do you think this is so important? Can we challenge that? Not going, you're wrong, that's not important. But really, when was the last time you used this? Shoulder pads, I haven't seen that many people wearing the jackets with the shoulder pads recently. Do you think they might come back in fashion? I mean, when fashions come back in again, maybe they're a little bit different. So the hot pink blazer with the shoulder pads, the pink might be a little bit of a different shade next time. And is it your size? Does it fit you? I'm not quite sure about that. So you're not passing judgment, you're asking questions about it. And I think, Marcy, you're going to be getting into that a little bit more. So we'll get into some of those questions as to how to get rid of the hot pink blazer. But you want to look at assisting with the organizing because of the distractibility, the perfectionism, the getting pulled off of task. How can you streamline the person's life? Help them feel less overwhelmed by their environment. Not just the stuff, but just the other aspects of their life. And also taking a look at, honestly being a cheerleader for them. Like I mentioned, that negative voice going on, ask them, what are the positive relationships that they've got in their lives? What positive things do they have happening? One woman that I worked with, so she had newspapers everywhere. All right, well, why do you have these newspapers? Well, because I need to find advertisements for them. Because I'm working with my synagogue. For the fundraisers, we need to be able to find people that would be willing to donate. I said, okay, well, why is that so important to you? Well, because I'm very active in the sisterhood. And I need to be in a sisterhood because, it's important. Okay, well, why is it important for you to be actively involved in the sisterhood with this particular activity of finding donations? Well, because my kids and my husband told me that I needed to do this. And I want to do this. I want to make them happy because I want them to love me. And I want them to be proud of me. And this is something that I can do. So she's got all of these newspapers and all of these donations and bags and boxes of everything stacked all over the place. Meanwhile, her husband has moved out. Her kids aren't talking to her. Well, why are they not having a relationship with her right now? Because of the cluttered space. So when we talk about, could you find another way to do it? Is there another aspect of involvement with the sisterhood? Is there another way that you could be involved with your family? Doing that creative problem solving to see if there's another way aside from the stuff. So finding replacement behaviors. It's very hard to find them because there's a lot of comfort, a lot of soothing that comes from stuff. One client told me, he said it jokingly. I said, well, what's going on with your stuff? He goes, I love my stuff more than I love my family. He goes, I know that sounds really bad. And I love my family, I really do. But my stuff doesn't nag me. My stuff doesn't criticize me. It doesn't give me a hard time. My kids, they're always laying into me. I don't want to deal with that. I'd rather go shopping and buy another shirt because I will feel good when I wear that shirt. I will feel good when I look at that shirt. And I said, well, wait, how often do you wear the shirts? Oh, no. But I can look at it. And I can remember how good I felt when I bought that shirt. Whereas when I'm around my kids, all I hear is that negativity. So it's an opportunity for you to bring some positivity into their lives. So when I think about these individuals, now I will say I have been very fortunate with the clients that I've had the opportunity to work with, mostly because they are self-referred for treatment, so there's some motivation in there. But I've also worked with individuals, court-ordered evaluations, follow-up services for some of the hoarding shows that you see on TV. So when we look at those individuals as well, across the board, I would say these individuals are some of the sweetest people I know. I would say they are sensitive, intelligent, creative, kind, sick, sensitive, intelligent, creative, and kind. They are wonderful people with creative, colorful backgrounds, amazing stories to tell. But you get between them and their stuff, and it is like a mama bear in her cup. I know I am going down. So that's where we look at the strategies for how you go about the decluttering. And that's where I'm going to bring Marcy in to talk about the strategies for it, because you don't want to alienate them. You don't want to basically close off any treatment options with them. So come on in.
Hi there. I'm Marcy Lovett. I'm a professional organizer and productivity consultant in Montgomery County. I see clients in Maryland, Washington, and parts of Virginia. Typically, when I work with hoarders, it's not the hoarder's first choice, if you will. I work with people all across the spectrum of clutter. And one of the handouts that hopefully you'll have, Oh, I'm sorry, let me interrupt for a minute about the handouts. If you don't have them, don't worry, we have plenty, and they will be on the website. But hopefully you'll be able to get copies of them and make multiple copies in different colored paper.
Please don't. I'm very anti-handout, but
How many are there all together, so we know it's not all?
Right, there are 7 pages altogether. So if you don't have them, I'll be standing at the piano afterward, and we can talk about handouts then.
Anybody need some? Okay, can you hand those?
Okay.
All right, Abby.
We'll make sure that you all get them before the end of the presentation, or before you go home. But seriously, I do work with a lot of people who are paper hoarders, and you would think, oh, it's just paper, they should be able to put it in the recycling bin. No. I have a client I'm working with now who said, but the paper is my joy. And that made me really sad, that cycling paper, which is what she's doing, it's not like she's taking action on anything, she's moving it from one side of the table to another, basically. She said that's her joy. That's how she spends her time. All right, one of the handouts, you might have it, you might not. Again, we're going to make sure you have all of them, is the Clutter Hoarding Scale, which was developed by the Institute for, thank you, Challenging Disorganization. It used to be called the National Study Group, and I still refer to it as that. It is not. It is the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. Thank you.
because hoarding is considered a dirty word in a lot of ways, so we try to remove it from the vocabulary, just because of the stigma that's associated with it.
Not only that, these people, as Dr. Bell said, have challenges. They have executive functioning challenges, and you can be on the hoarding spectrum and not appear to be a hoarder, and we're going to talk about that briefly. So you may walk into a client's home and say, I don't really see anything. I don't see what the issue is, because you may not know that their hoarding is behind closed doors, because they want to appear normal, if you will. As Dr. Bell said, there's a lot of shame attached to hoarding. So if they don't want people to see and they've sort of got it under control, they may actually be hiding it. Is it so?
Storage unit.
Storage units. Can I tell you the number of clients I work with who have a storage unit? Yeah. Or multiple storage, or multiple storage units. And what I routinely try to get them to understand is that whatever's in that storage unit, they could have bought 4 times over by now, because of the fees that they're paying on those storage units. However, just being sensible is not always the best answer. Just saying, well, do you know how much money you could have saved? It's not important. The stuff is important. Anyway, you'll take a look at the Clutter Hoarding Scale, and you'll see that hoarding exists on a continuum. Not every hoarding home is going to look like the ones on television. And anybody watch Hoarders? Yeah. Those are extreme cases, and they're made for television. Remember that. They pick the worst possible cases, and they cut and they segue, boom, 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 with that music. Okay, they make it look even worse than it is. And I've been to some really bad homes with insects, with, all kinds of things. So it can be really bad. But there are clean hoarders too, if that makes any sense. Okay, not everybody hoards garbage.
Actually, it's probably less than 0.5 out of every 100,000 in the population. Whereas hoarding across the spectrum would be 26 out of every 100,000.
Okay. And thank you. And you may not realize that the statistics show about 2% of the population has a hoarding issue. So your neighbors, your colleagues, your clients, somebody is hoarding and is doing such a good job of covering up that you may not know. A lot of these folks have jobs. Okay, they may not have families at this point who share any time with them, but they get up and they go to work. People would not know that they have the issue that they have at home.
And there's no Scarlet H that you have to wear.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of, thank you, Scarlet H, we try to use person-centered language because of the stigma, and I know everybody thinks, oh, this is so PC, but instead of labeling someone a hoarder, which I tend to do when I speak, we talk about people with a hoarding syndrome, or we talk about people with a hoarding issue, or with a clutter issue, depending upon what it is. Because, you don't talk about people who have physical issues as saying, well, he's a cancer. He's someone who has cancer. This is someone who has an issue with hoarding. Anyway, that's my little commercial, so thank you for indulging me. You may not know what the causes are for hoarding. As Dr. Bell said, it can be a trauma. But have you considered other things? Another handout that you have, or that you will get, is factors associated with disorganization. People who don't see well might leave things out because they can't see if it's in the dark, if the home isn't well lit. So they leave things out where they can see them. They can't go in the closet because the closet is dark. So they've started leaving their clothing out. Okay, maybe we can come up with different issues for that. They might have some other issue. They may be lonely, okay, and they start collecting things to replace the feelings that they had when they were surrounded by people who loved them. There might be financial concerns, and I know this may not make a lot of sense, but they buy things because they might not have the money later. Okay? I know it does not make sense, but if I have it now, I won't have to worry about later.
I actually had a client who had a walker that she had rescued from a neighbor who had let it go. So rescuing a lot of items.
But a walker makes sense. A lot of people, when they're older, have trouble walking, so I might need a walker. Okay, but I might need a bedside commode, and I might need, so then there's, all this grabbing of stuff and
Just in case.
collecting just in case. Forgetfulness. Okay, what I see a lot of times is they buy something and then they don't know they have it and they buy it again. So that can contribute to it. So finding out what else is going on with your client beyond serious mental illness, which is really what contributes to true hoarding. Hoarding is not something that affects people who are necessarily low on the socioeconomic spectrum. And I think a lot of people have that belief. I had someone call me from a luxury high-rise in Washington, D.C., and she didn't really get to it. She's not really a hoarder, but she has paths in her home. Okay, that's the first tip off. When people call me and say I'm not a hoarder, I know there's going to be an issue.
I'm not like those people on TV,
I
promise.
Not like those people on TV. Okay, because you don't have roaches or because you don't have kids? What? Because it's paper and it's not clothing. Because it's clean. You do the laundry, but you have paths. Okay. If there are bits, my stuff, it's not theirs. Yeah, there you go. When people call me and say, I think I'm a hoarder, usually they're not. Because we've taken that term into, popular language, and you say, oh, I'm a hoarder. I collect Mary's moo-moos, or I collect Beanie Babies, or whatever. Okay, that doesn't make you a hoarder. Hoarders, people who hoard, typically collect things that don't make sense. Okay, they have
Or
things that
to a quantity that
that doesn't make sense. Okay, so this woman called me. She's not a hoarder. Okay. I do a phone screen to find out what the situation is and how I can help them and if we'll be able to work together. Finally come to find out why she's calling me, because the condo association sent her a letter. Okay, what kind of letter? Okay, what kind of letter does the condo association send to you? So she's going to get evicted, basically. So as it turned out, after conversation and email and conversation, we never set a date. She wanted me to write a plan of action to send to the board to put it off. Okay, well, that's not going to solve anything, obviously. They had given her 30 days, which is certainly not enough time. But she wanted a longer plan of action with 2 to 3 hours a week.
Not enough time.
Yeah. What are you going to do in 2 to 3 hours a week? When you work with someone who hoards, every decision is agonizing. Every decision. So this piece of equipment that cost, I don't know, $300, whatever it was, this phone that cost $600 is just as important as this napkin from my children's wedding. Because they got divorced, and it's all I have of that moment. Okay, so it's very, very difficult for them to make decisions about things. You know, I remember what I was wearing the day that I went to this presentation, and she was so on the mark, and I wanted to remember that, so I'm going to keep the piece of paper. Okay, so even beyond sentiment, which is huge, because sentimental attachment can be given to any number of things, utility becomes very, very important. The walker that I could use 20 years from now, the food that I have stored in case I get laid off from my job, whatever it is, very important. I will be able to use it.
The parachute.
The parachute, I love that one. I love the parachute because you never know.
It's got
You
utility.
never know. It definitely has utility. Those people on TV are hoarding garbage.
They don't have a parachute.
They don't
like
have a
I do.
parachute. I am so not like them. So anyway, look at the behaviors that your clients are exhibiting. Is it shopping? Okay, yeah, I have a lot of clients who like QVC, and I personally have nothing against QVC. I have shopped from QVC myself, but I don't watch it and order every single day. And things I don't need, things I already have, things that I have that serve that same purpose, etc., etc.
Things that never make it out of the box once you
Things that never make it out of the box and go right into the storage unit. So, talking to them again, trying to just make sense with someone who exhibits hoarding behaviors is not gonna change the behavior, but certainly talking to them and asking them what's going on and trying to get them to understand what they're doing can be helpful. So if it's over shopping, can they find another activity instead of shopping? If it's grocery shopping, can they get groceries brought in to keep them out of the grocery store? Whatever it is, finding some other way to manage the behavior that's a problem. Contracts often work because a lot of these people are overachievers to begin with, believe it or not. As Dr. Bell said, a lot of them have strong perfectionistic tendencies, and if I can't do it exactly right, I'm not going to do it at all. So having a contract, okay, whether they're getting evicted or whether the family is unhappy, or having some kind of a let's make a deal, okay, that this is where we're going to go, this is how we're going to start, this is how we're going to see progress, and most important, what's the deal? Okay, what do you get at the end? Finding something that's going to make them feel that it's worthwhile getting rid of their stuff. Just going in and getting rid of stuff, not going to work, as Dr. Bell said. Thank you. First of all, it's painful. Okay, you have things in your home that you love. Okay, maybe you have a jewelry box full of expensive jewelry. If I came in and took your jewelry box of expensive jewelry, or if I came in and took your years of photo albums, would you feel violated?
Yes.
Okay? That's how it feels when a crew comes in and clears out someone's home who has been hoarding. It doesn't matter that they're empty soda bottles or old newspapers, because they have a value to me. So you've just violated me. So that is not something we want to do. I have been called by family members who say, my parents are going on vacation for 2 weeks. Can you come in with a crew? No, I won't do it. I won't do it. So you can't. It's not fair. And what I end up saying to them is the same thing. How would you feel if I came to your house and took out stuff that I thought was garbage? So we don't do it that way. It's just, it's not professional, and it just doesn't work. And it's gonna start all over again.
And it'll make it harder to start all over again because their trust
There's
has now
no
been
trust.
violated.
Right. There's
so
no trust.
if you're able to get in the door that first time, the second time, no, there's like 10 deadbolts on the door the
Right.
next time.
Right, right. So another handout, communicating with folks. Okay, another good thing for you to look at. Things to say, things not to say. One of the things that I try to stress when I work with clients is it's not about the stuff, it's about your safety. That's what we work on. It's about your safety and your health. So that's something to work toward. Readiness for change. This really is targeted at the clients themselves. Okay, how do you know you're ready to make a change? But I included it because I think it's important for you to recognize when someone is ready to take the step to ask for help and to make the changes. And then finally, collaborative therapy, which may be the most important thing. Okay, along with how you talk to someone and what you do, is having a team. I prefer not to work with people who are hoarding unless they're seeing a therapist. Because, again, going in, grabbing the stuff, clearing it out, making it look like a magazine spread, all well and good, but it's just going to come back. And it's going to come back worse if the underlying behaviors are not addressed. So, the benefits from psychotherapy cannot be understated. Along with working with a professional organizer who can help them. And believe it or not, this is what we do. What do you think? You already have 3 of this. Do you think we can let this one go?
But this one's different from the other ones.
You're right. So if we had to pick 2 of the 4, which 2 would you prefer? Okay, this one has coffee stains on it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
that
We'll
one's
let-
damaged. I can let that one.
Okay. All right. And this one is kind of blurry because it's a copy of a copied copy. Yeah.
But I remember when I got that one.
Okay.
So that one feels a little bit, that one reminds me of my daughter.
Okay. Okay.
Because she
That's
was
good.
with me when I was making the copy.
Okay. I'm so proud of you. You got rid of one.
Okay.
Okay. You let go of one. That's great. Can we let go of one more?
If I can keep that one,
Okay.
then I can let go of it.
Okay. All right. Great. So now we've got 2. Fabulous. That's what I do.
And that's, but it really is going through piece by piece and taking the time to listen to what that individual is saying, paying attention to what they're feeling, what their reaction is, and not passing judgment. I mean, it's very easy to be like, it's crap, come on.
It's a piece of paper. They're all the same. Just pick one.
But it's when you sit down, and honestly, if you're going through that process and you're showing that respect for the person, and one of the ways you show respect for them is by respecting their space and by respecting their property. They're going to be that much more likely to be receptive to what you're presenting to them and be that much more likely to engage in the process with you of letting go of things.
Right.
Because they're understanding that you are working in their best interest.
Right. And they'll often say, this is getting ridiculous. Just take all of them. I'll
Yeah,
just
I'm
keep
just-
them. Yeah. So, but you have to show them that respect as an individual for them and for their property.
I'm going to defer the questions until after the next 2 short presentations.
Okay,
Would
you
that
have
be
more.
okay?
Absolutely.
I'm going to take prerogative of the chair, and I got to move the program along to get you guys out of here.
All right.
So if it's okay, I'm going to defer questions, and then you can grab them, you get their cards, and you can contact them individually. I'm not going to ask if it's okay because I've decided. The DCSRG is celebrating its 10th anniversary. We've been in business for 10 years. And thank you for that. Today we've broken another record. We're well over 110 people here this morning. Where's Susan? We're challenging grows. Lookout grows. There we go. All right. We are not going to turn to a grows. Okay, we have another announcement, and that is one of our sponsors who has been loyal with us, and I thank you. I thank you for that, Dan. This is the second time he is sponsored. I hope I've embarrassed everybody who was not sponsored during the first 10 years. We'll be calling you. I know who you are. We need sponsors for next year. It's time to pony up. By the way, let me know, email me how the food is. The Methodist Home is responsible and responsive if you don't like the food, and some people told me they didn't like the food. Let me know, okay? You know, I can take it. If it doesn't kill me, it'll only make us better, and it'll only make them better, okay? We're spending a lot of money for the food. Let me know if you don't like it. In any event, Dan is, and I constantly say his name wrong only to tease him and irritate him. But the announcement is that his organization, For Sales Limited, has been recognized as on the list of one of the fastest growing small businesses in the country. And it's the first one that we have in terms of all of our businesses, and businessmen, hang on because there is going to be an announcement. Dan, you want to take over for a few minutes?
I had a honeymoon when I got into this business. I took over For Sales in 2006, and I had about a 3-month honeymoon where I didn't walk into any hoarding situations. That honeymoon came to an abrupt and screeching halt, and now I've had a progression of, well, I have a hoarding situation. And in fact, one of the culminations of that was when we got called by Harpo Productions about 5 years ago, and we consulted with them on the first show they did on hoarding, about that house in Rockville. Did anybody see that show? Well, they ended up moving 10,000 of those orange crates out to a warehouse over by a metro station up towards Rockville. So out of the house. 10,000 of those orange crates. Racks and racks and racks of clothing. What was fascinating was it was the low end of the spectrum. You didn't need one of everything, you needed 10 of everything. And that's for me where the terminology came, the plushie toy hoarder. Because I see two basic kinds of hoarders. I see plushie toy hoarders and I see jewelry hoarders. Which ones do you think I like? That was an interesting experience because we laid out a program for them that they actually ended up following, and that resulted in that show. Now, I get the call a lot, I've got a hoarding situation. Generally, it's not. It's somewhere on the scale, on the spectrum. I think of it more as excessive collecting in most cases, because if it's really a hoarding situation, the reaction from my organization has to be different. And so you know who we are. For Sales is the largest professional estate sales auctions and appraisals company in the Mid-Atlantic. We've been in business continuously since 1972, so fingers and toes, this is our 40th year of operation. And to my delight, we are actually recognized on the Inc. magazine's 5,000 fastest growing companies list. We're number 2735 out of 7 million privately held companies in the United States. Thank you. That just puts more of an onus on us to do a better job. In fact, I think we have some hoarders in this room. I don't know. I've been keeping track. We have people who've come by 5 and 6 times picking up the giveaways on my table. So see Marcy afterwards, okay?
Stop taking pens. How many chip clips do you need?
Now these are good pens. They can take the pens. I'm okay with that. We specialize in on-premises estate sales. We have our own auction center down in Madison. According to Inc. magazine, we're growing at 86% a year. I can tell you the auction center is growing a little faster than that because it's a new startup. But we've been very blessed to be a sponsor here, and we certainly hope you enjoyed the breakfast we provided. And for those of you who stopped to see us, if you are encountering a situation, and we work with realtors and estate planners and professional organizers and clinical psychologists, when you've got a person who's transitioning out of their home or simply needs to lighten the load and is prepared to do so, then we are definitely the company to help. There is not a home that we can't empty anytime, any place. We do it every week. We're currently doing no less than 1 estate sale, usually 2 estate sales every single weekend, and we're doing approximately 10 to 12 auction pickups. So these are homes where there's not enough stuff for an on-premises estate sale. 10 to 12 auction pickups every 14 days. We run up to 5, sometimes even 6 auctions per month at our facility down in Madison, drawing a crowd of 300 to 500 people for those, and on the weekends in the in-home sales, approximately 1,400 people through the house in 2.5 days. selling 90% of the value and about 80–85% of the physical contents. So with that being said, if you know someone who's getting ready to transition out, or you just need some consultation on what do we do with all of this stuff, I'm more than happy to help. Yes, ma'am?
What's the minimum number of pieces you will remove from a property?
It depends on the value. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to create an economic inversion. Okay? We want to create a situation where the client is always getting economic benefit for their things. And if that's not possible, then we do everything to minimize the cost. We run it at cost so they tell their friends. Has the bucket made its way around yet? It's almost there?
No,
Okay.
hasn't come up yet.
Okay.
Hang on and we'll keep moving.
Okay, all right. So yesterday, day before yesterday, I went to a house up in Potomac. And I got the phone call, and I made the appointment, and I'm looking at the name going, I know this name, I know this name, I know this name. Couldn't find it. I'm driving up there. I get about 3 blocks away, and I go, oh, God, I know this name. Quickly pulled up in my calendar. Indeed, I had seen her 2 years ago, October 1st, 2 years ago. And I thought, oh, my God, if this house is as bad as the last time I was here, because she is a level 4, and she can't afford the help. That's something you run into is they've spent so much money getting all the stuff, they can't afford the help when they need it, or they buy the wrong kind of help. She had a professional organizer working with her who clearly was not getting her making any progress. I walked in, and the only thing I was grateful for was there was not quite as much cat as there was the last time I'd been there. Oh. But it was interesting. You know, I ended up spending an hour with her, giving her some guidance, but there really wasn't much economically we could do for her, so it was more a matter of how do we minimize her expenses, how do we help her clear her space, how do we help her move forward. She's very blessed. She has a great support group of friends. She certainly needs them because she can't afford to pay for the assistance at this juncture anymore.
My name's Steve Gurney from Guide to Retirement Living Sourcebook, and my colleague Marlene, you're here? Okay. How many of you have been to a big event? A lot of folks. If you haven't been to one of these, Robert started putting together this special program for DCSRG every year, and it's sort of ballooned out of control beyond anybody's wildest expectations. And I think the last few years he's pretty much shut down his law practice to sort of coordinate the juggling of volunteers and sponsorship and things like this. And my heart goes out to this guy because I know he's one of the best attorneys here in the DC area. And so I was always lending some support in terms of, could we find a better venue for parking? Could we manage could we coordinate the volunteers in a way that didn't keep you up at night for a week before this event? And as you can see, you can probably guess where we're planning the big event. Next is at Nationals Ballpark. And the date for this, we'll pass out a flyer, is March 19th of 2013. So it's hopefully going to be the World Series winning Nationals. Okay, we know it's going to be the playoff-bound Nationals, which is something this town would never dream about. This will be indoor. It's not going to be on the field. There are some unbelievable, luxurious venues. Josh Viola was a minor league baseball player that played for the Baltimore Orioles, and he got sent down to a minor league team. And when he got his letter of where he was going to live, because these guys don't make any money, it was the Belvedere Assisted Living in Ohio. Okay, so Josh lived in an assisted living community as a pro baseball player for an entire season. And Cindy Griffith Novak is the innovative owner of this assisted living that made this whole thing happen. And we're flying the two of them in to give a presentation. And just so you know, Hollywood's already optioned this. What's the guy? Bradley Cooper is supposed to play Josh. So you'll get an opportunity to meet and hear their story in advance. Now, you don't need to be a baseball player to understand the message of this, and this really rings true with what we're trying to do at Sourcebook and DCSRG, is think outside of the box. What Josh, living in an assisted living, he broke all the rules of the age-segregated senior living world that we live in, and it's really a story that can inspire us all to think outside the box, and I think it's going to be just a fantastic event at a fantastic location. The sponsorships are going to be available, But our goal with this event is to go way outside the box of just trick-or-treating for senior care professionals, set up a table, give out tchotchkes that are going to go to some hoarder's closet, okay? There will be a limited amount of booths that will be available for sponsors, but what our goal is to have some really fun, engaging exercises that really promote one thing: engagement between providers. And you don't need a table with tchotchkes to make that happen. We'll have a scorecard, we'll have giveaways, we'll have a lot of things to encourage that amongst providers. So the cool thing is here, everybody in this room is this is the only group, aside from a few people Marlene called before this event that sponsored last year, that knows about this. We're not telling anybody else for a whole week. We've got a flyer that we'll pass out. We don't have 110 though, Robert. So Marlene, if you can start passing out the flyers. If you don't get a flyer, give me or Marlene your card. We'll email you the information so that you can get on the first list of attendees and sponsors. And again, we're really charged up about this opportunity. We hope that it helps progress DCSRG, and we look forward to all of you guys being involved in one way, shape, or form. Thanks a lot.
Steve, what's the date?
Oh, it's March 19th, and I think that's a Tuesday. It's a lunch event, too. It's fully catered by the Nationals official caterer. It's lunch. The venue, there's not a game going on, so literally, it's the one place in D.C. where there's unlimited parking. You're steps away from where you walk in, and you can take the metro very easily. It's just a fantastic venue, whether we had the speaker or not. So,
Excellent. Thank you, Steve.